So when it comes to mathematics, English, or Japanese, there's usually one major test that kids will take that kind of prove their overall uh, level of acquisition for that particular skill. But then when it comes to the you know social studies area, or more specifically the geography and history area, there's not really a single standardized test that you'd have. There's several different tests, and you kind of put them together to form an idea of how well you know certain things. But one of those tests, and none of these are quite as famous as the ones I mentioned before, the math, English, or Japanese ones, but one of these tests is the International Flag Test, and there's various levels of these. We uh, just started these ones, so I'm not too familiar with the system yet. But the main flag test here, um, it takes place 10 different locations across Japan, and I don't think there's any kind of online version that you can take. Uh, there are different levels of each type of test. So my understanding is that to get the top marks, or let's say the top um, reward. Where's that coming to me? The the prove you're a master in this category. You'd want to do the flag test, the flag and geography test, and the flag and people test. People like famous people, whether celebrities or historic figures, and so on, as well as two other tests, which focus in on specific countries, and they have a list of potential countries: Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Korea, Russia, Taiwan, Malaysia, France, or America. So we haven't taken any of these specific tests yet, so I don't know how detailed anything would be on those tests. And I also find it kind of strange that there's no, uh, I mean, there's no Japanese, but or Japan, but at the same time, this is for, I guess, international studies. So the you know the level of history or geography that might be required would probably be different anyway. So there's different tests more specified to Japan. Um, anyway, for each level, for example, this flag here. Let's open that up. So the flag test, oh, brings us to the same page. That's not very helpful. All right. So for the flag test, there's also 5 levels of those tests. Let's see if they are listed anywhere here. Boom. So here we go. So in most of the tests that you get in Japan, for whether it's for kids or adults, the lower the number, the higher the more proficient it means you are in that subject. So this is 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, and 1st grade being the hardest, 5th being the easiest. And for this particular test, it says the 5th grade, 40 questions, you need 70% to pass, and they're all multiple choice. When you go up to the 4th level, you get 50 questions, still 70%, still all multiple choice. And 3rd level, you have 60 questions, but 20 of them are written. So you probably have to write the country name or some kind of detail. My son and I have only taken the level 5 and 4, and I'll get to that a little bit more later. We'll be taking the 3 and 2 soon. So at level 3, you need 75% to pass. And then level 2 and 1, you need 80% to pass, which is actually quite common for a lot of these tests, that you'll need somewhere between 70 or 80% to pass most of these kinds of tests. whether it's no matter what subject it is. You'll get the rare test where it's 60%, very lenient in comparison at least, and then you'll have some rare tests where it's like 90%, which is pretty crazy because that doesn't give you a lot of room for error. So yeah. Once you get to the highest level on this test, you get 50 multiple choice questions and 50 written questions. And you have a time limit for these tests. I think it's exactly 1 hour. So 1 hour to do 100 questions, 80%. I think it can be tough. I've seen reports of a lot of people failing that anyway. So there's a lot of different possible textbooks that you have here. We got this one and this one. They're off camera, yeah, to go over the flags. They also go over a lot of history and how flags came to be, and they give some example questions of very varying difficulties, showing flags from long ago and so on. And some of these questions will appear on the test once you get to the level 1, or I think if you go on to the other tests where it includes either geography or people, you'll probably have the more difficult types of these questions. But I think any of these could also be on the regular flag test. So if you pass any of these flag tests, you'll get here's my son's certificate. You'll get this cool certificate here that says this is level 4 that he passed. And there's the 5 levels. Apparently, if you get all 5 levels on a single category, like for the regular flags, you get this. They have it here on the page. You get this International Knowledge Master card or title. And if you get 3 different the larger categories, like I mentioned earlier, so you get the flags and geography, and the flags and people, all 3 of those, you'll become a international knowledge supermaster. So that's this, I guess, white card here. And then if you get 5 of them, so you would pick from 2 more from like Thailand, Malaysia, America, Indonesia, and everything else they had on the list. If you get 2 more of those, you get this gold Supermaster, or sorry, Grandmaster, International Knowledge Grandmaster card, and that title. So, I mean, it's these tests are kind of actually expensive, but once you get up there, it's you will also definitely gain the knowledge from these. And besides the tests themselves, this particular association also has a flag competition. And to enter the flag competition, you have to be, I think, at least elementary grade 4 student or above, or have already gained the International Knowledge Master title, this pinkish one or red one. I guess maybe it's supposed to be bronze, I don't know. But if you have that, even if you are young, and my son is still 6, we haven't got it yet, but he's 6, and if he gains this, he'll be able to actually enter this tournament. And one of the most interesting things about this particular test that you don't get with other tests is that, let's see if it says anywhere on this page here, I'm sure it's going to say somewhere, is that there is okay, I have no idea where it actually is, but there is a parent and child version of the test that you can take. So what exactly is that? And here's the prices for each test. And this would be individually. If you take the parent one, you get, I think, an extra 3,500 yen per test, and it's held 4 times a year. You can take it You can take up to 3 different tests in at once, but if it's a kid, it's gonna be tough to concentrate that long, I think. So that'd be 3 different hours of just taking tests. Oh, here it says, yeah, you have to be oh, so maybe it's grade 3 or higher. You can take the test or the competition, I mean. Um, yeah. So the parent and child test, the most interesting thing about that is that, and I wish I could find where it says on the site, but I'll just go with what I know about it. Anyway, um, is that the parent or it can be like a sibling or other family member. You can go with your grandparent or whatever, and a younger child or a younger person can go take the test together. So both of them can take the test, and it's very lenient what you're allowed to do. And there's no age restriction on these tests either. So technically, you could take like a newborn baby, like the day after they're born, to the test, and as a parent, you're allowed to fill in the answers or speak in a quiet voice to your child while you're taking the test. So the two of you can, you know, converse and say, "Oh, what do you think this flag is?" And you know, um, sort of go back and forth. And the questions, they are generally like either the majority are they show you a flag and they'll ask you, okay, what flag is this? And then you'll either have to select from multiple choice or write down the answer, or the opposite. Um, they will give you the country name and have you select the flag. So one or the other is going to be the majority of the questions as far as I currently know. And again, we've only taken the level 5 and 4 of the main flag test. So that's all I know about this one so far. But yeah, as long as you know, the roughly 200 flags, and as well as other sort of famous flags like maybe the UN flag or other flags that show up frequently, and they'll ask you questions about these flags, like different parts of the flag. So, for example, on the level 5, my son and I, we only got one question wrong out of the 40 questions. And even though it was multiple choice, they asked, okay, what flag has a banana on it? And, you know, uh, I couldn't remember, I don't remember ever seeing anything that it was absolutely a banana, as far as I could tell. So my son and I were talking, okay, what's the banana, right? And it didn't come to us. So I think we both guessed something wrong on there. The answer was Fiji. So normally you see the flag maybe this size, right? It doesn't look like there's a banana. Then you zoom in. Is there a banana? And let's see, I actually have it open over here. So Fiji flag. Look, this, even when you're looking at it, is that a banana? I don't know. But apparently it is. So yeah, the Fiji flag's a banana. Um, yeah, so this particular test, the one of the most interesting things about it, as I was saying, is you can take it with your child together, and you can study together, and you can go in and take the actual test together, which is, I think, very rare for most tests. So when we took the level 4, actually same day as the level 5, um, there was actually one question I was writing. I wrote down incorrectly. I think I selected the wrong one, and then my son and I we compared answers after, and I looked and I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I made a mistake. So he saved me 1 point there. Uh, and there's a few questions where I saved him a point. So it's kind of neat being able to study together and take the test together, because again, most subjects you can study together, but even if you take the test on the same day, you can't really, work together to pass the test for most tests. Um, you know, if you're following the rules at least. So that's one of the most interesting and kind of fun things about this particular test. So you just have to really study all of the flags, make sure that you know um, as much of the history of the flags as you can too. And we will be, as I said, we will be taking the level 3 and 2 soon. So I'll probably have a video out about that soon. Um, yeah, so I will also put up a short video about the level 4 and 5 and how those went for us, I guess. Or maybe I'll just say it here because uh, I mean, there wasn't too much to go over. It's just a whole series of questions. As I mentioned, the level 5, the Fiji flag. Didn't notice the bananas got that question wrong. Uh, and on the level 4, there are a couple questions we got wrong. I think that um, there's a couple questions where, I definitely should have known, but it's, the kind of test pressure kind of makes you more stupid than usual, right? So one of them was the United Nations flag. What is the center of the United Nations flag? And it's centered in the North Pole, but I think I might have selected equator, and I'm pretty sure my son just selected the same as me for this particular question because we were checking our answers. Uh, and if you look at it, obviously the center is not the equator, so that's something. And another question that kind of um, came up that should have been obvious to us is it is a pretty simple question about the American flag, actually. They asked, like, okay, how many stars are in the first row of the flag, right? And normally, if I see the American flag, it's like something like this, very far away. And even if you get close, oh, it's, uh, I mean, I've, my son has never been to America. I've been there for like just a couple days my entire life. So, you know, mostly I just see this flag on TV, but, it's probably one of the most famous flags in the world, right? Maybe the most famous flag in the world. And I probably should have known. I knew, it was 50 stars. Uh, I knew they were lined up, um, you know, in a certain way, and I actually did the calculations on the test. Like I thought, okay, uh, if we have six and then five, and then 6 and 5, I'm like, okay, that works out. You can get 50, nice that way, but you'd have 9 rows, and I just couldn't fathom that there were 9 rows of stars on a flag. I don't know why. I thought it can't be 9 rows. That's way too many. It was 9 rows. So even though I calculated it, I picked the wrong answer. And I don't my son didn't know how many stars were on the top either. So kind of an embarrassing one there. And then probably one of the hardest questions on the level 4 that we got wrong was what is the bird on the Guatemalan flag? So there's a bird on that flag there. And it is I don't know the pronunciation of this in English, but it's the quetzal. So is the bird. So they'll ask you questions like what bird is on this flag, or what color comes first, or like how many stripes are on this flag. And there's obviously, a lot of flags in the world, so there's a lot of things that you need to know. I think when you get to the higher levels, the questions will be more like how many points are on this star, how many stars are on this flag. Like if you had Australia, it would be 6, New Zealand would be 4, Brazil would be 27, I think, 26, 27. Pretty sure it's 27. So you really have to, you know, study these flags and know what's going on. But as long as you've got a really good grasp of roughly 200 flags. Um, I think the level 5 and level 4 at least, you should be able to pass. They're only, what do we say, 70% for each of those. Once you get to the level 1, the 80% and half the questions are written, you still have that time limit. I expect it's going to be a lot more difficult. But, being able to study with someone else and take the test together, converse about your answers, show your answers, or even write the other person's answers for them, you know, I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go about taking this test. And this is also one of those subjects that's, I think, fun for younger kids. So there's, when my son takes a math test or an English test or the kanji tests in Japanese, those are when he's actually taking the test themselves, and most of the time when he's studying, he's not having a lot of fun. But when we're studying the flags, you bring up some flags. Okay, what's this country? 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 And um, it's actually usually enjoyable for him. Once you get into the tough questions like, okay, when was this country founded or something like that, then it starts getting less fun. But I think this is one of the more fun tests that kids can do. So this is one of the things that we are doing to, up his geography and history ability, and frankly my own as well, because um, you know I never really studied a lot of the stuff until relatively recently, I would say. When I was a kid, I did not, I don't think I could tell you 50 different country flags, let alone like almost 200, right? So I think this is also good for adults to study, especially if they're not already very familiar with flags. So, yeah, that is my general takeaway. I think this test is a really interesting test, the way it's put together. Uh, I'm interested in us moving forward, taking the higher grades, hopefully to getting a International Knowledge Master cards, and going on to take the more difficult tests. And, we'll keep up reports of how these tests are going, if they were fun, if they weren't, and so on. So far, they've been nice. Um, so that's the flags. I would recommend it. The only big downsides, I guess, the two biggest downsides. One is, again, there are only 10 places currently in Japan where this test is held. I think it's held 4 times a year though, so you have a lot of chances to take it, but 10 places is not a lot in like the entire country. And then the other one is we will have it well, actually this is this is one more. It starts really early, so let's say you have to travel an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever, to get to the place where you take the test. You can, if you only sign up for one test in one day, you can ask them to take it at the latest time. So you get actually it's 40 minutes per test, not an hour. So 100 questions in 40 minutes. Anyway, yeah, you can ask them to take the one starting at 11, just after 11 a.m. instead of saying, oh, I got to get there by 9. But it starts pretty early. The biggest setback to this test is it's pretty expensive compared to a lot of other tests, because you can take 3 of these a day. So let's say that you, like any single one of these tests, the price is roughly what you'd pay for any of the more major tests in other categories, like the kanji test or whatever, right? And if you take 3 of them in a day, plus if you do the parent and child test and add an extra 3,500 yen on top of these, you're going to be spending like, 20,000 yen in a single day, basically, or more. Even it could be 30,000 if you're taking the higher ones, I guess. So, and then, there's travel, whether it's train or car, gas, whatever. So the biggest drawback I'd say is the price. Second is the lack of location. And third is the time is always early despite the lack of location. And on the flip side, it's fun. You can take it with your kid. It's interesting to study. And I think there's this kind of knowledge that people these days, a lot of people are lacking. This is another one of those things where people say, oh, it doesn't matter. Or I think a lot of people will say it doesn't matter. But at the same time, it's the kind of general knowledge that you probably should have. At least be able to identify country flags. Maybe you don't need to know the history of all of them or whatever for most people, but it's something they should have. So, anybody interested in taking these tests, leave a comment and tell me also what country you think would be good to take here once we get done with these other ones. I think actually once we get the flag tests and my son becomes a flag master, gets this card here, I think that we might try the competition. We've got a different page now, so this is, I guess, the competition page that we got to here. So you can the competition. There's also 2 different versions. You can take it normally, 7,500 yen, or you can take it with parent and child, and I think the trophies are separated for the individual and the parent and child one. But the parent and child one, just entering the competition is 11,000 yen. So it's not cheap, not cheap. So, but everybody who enters would get this pin, and I think every year the pin is like a different country's flag or something. We haven't done this yet, so I'm not 100% sure. And if you win, you get like a trophy or something. So it's pretty cool. How many? Not sure how many questions are on. Okay, here we go. So this test, 300 questions apparently. 300. That's actually quite a bit. And if you take the test with your kid, that's 300 each. So 600 points. How much time do you get for this test? I don't know. For the parent, or sorry, for the competition one. That is something that I would like to look up here. I'm sure we'll find it. Oh, really? Okay, so so the actual competition 2 times a year, and it says here it's the same. We only have 40 minutes to do the test, I guess, or even for this 300 question one, is my understanding just from this page. But maybe I'm missing something. I'm just sort of like scrolling back and forth while I'm talking. So, but 40 minutes, 300 questions, that's gonna be kind of rough, I think. I don't know how many are multiple choice and how many aren't. I would assume that most of them are written if it's a competition. But yeah, we will see. So, remember to check your birds on your flags and your bananas. Go take these tests.